Call to order the meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers. Manager Maxwell is unable to attend, but the remainder of the managers are here. And our first order is to swear in Manager Hejmati. I'm very happy to know that Manager Hejmati and Manager Maxwell will be appointed by the Hennepin County Board earlier this week. So Mr. Smith will give the oath to everyone.
Manager Hejmati, if you would stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Arun Hejmati, that I will support the Constitution of the United States
will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of manager of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I see no members of the public. A note about the agenda before I ask for a motion. We will take up items 13 and 14 before 12. And with that change, is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Manager Olson moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Hejmati seconds. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for including the fourth quarter financial report in our packet for us to read. On the consent agenda is one item, the approval of the January 23rd board meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Hejmati seconds. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? At our last meeting, I had no report, but I have a number of meetings to talk about this evening. Manager Olson and Mr. Whisker and I attended the recognition dinner for Marv Johnson, longtime mayor of Independence. It was a huge turnout, like, practically standing room only, and such enthusiasm. People who gave tributes recognized his public service and his care for people, his sense of community, his mentorship, and the deep knowledge he had of his community and of municipal government. The tributes came from so many people that we went an hour and a half over, I think, and they went from the high, Senator Klobuchar, to the bottom, on myself. There were so many people there to say such good things about Marv. It was wonderful. Great event. And Senator Olson was there as well.
How many years was he mayor?
47?
That's amazing.
Something like that.
It's a
Over
lot.
40. I think he's in the top 10 longest serving mayors in the United States. I think he ranks number 6 in the longest serving.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jerry-
longest in Minnesota, though.
Jerry Rockfam in Spring Park served for something over 40 years too, but apparently Marv
But consecutive?
Yes.
Yeah, and Rockfam's just a little
was,
broken up.
that's right, that's right. Yeah.
Not comparing them.
Anyway, he is just a grand person. It was really fun to be there. Food wasn't bad either. I also, together with managers Maxwell and Hejmati, had a briefing from staff updating us on the 325 Blake Road and briefing us in preparation for a steering committee meeting or a liaison meeting with Hopkins. Earlier this week, the League of Women Voters representatives from the Metropolitan Council of Leagues came to the office. They had approached me originally because of metro watersheds. So we talked about watersheds overall and the state watersheds, but their concern is metro. And then they got a great presentation from our staff. Ms. Hoppy and Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Whisker were there. And they just were really enthusiastic and positive about the report about our district. So that was pretty terrific. And then we have upcoming meetings scheduled with Representative Joachim and Senator Glatz, as Mr. Whisker and I do. One more item to mention is that we got a notice that Minnesota Watersheds will have a special meeting on March 21st in Waite Park to amend the policy regarding legislative and resolutions process. And we don't have any details yet, but they have asked us to send delegates, so at our next meeting, when we have more information, we can make that determination. Yes.
And I'd like to request that our staff, we're going, those of us who are going to fill out the delegate application. That's got to be sent in prior to the meeting. We found out when we got to our winter conference that our names were not on the approved delegate list. So we had to make a special effort to get on that. So somehow it was missed. And I just want to make sure that this go around we do that again, because now they're sending that application fill out form to us.
We'll get about 4 weeks between the 27th and the 21st,
Yeah.
so that should be adequate. Mr. Whisker?
President White, Manager Olson, Board of Managers, I know for a fact that Deb filled out the delegate forms and got them to Minnesota Watershed, so I think this time we'll just
Triple check to make sure
Thank you.
we have the ones that were filled out and sent.
Yeah.
That is what I have to report on. Manager Loftus, can you report on the committee meeting?
Yes, this evening we met as a committee and discussed Minnehaha Parkway. We're in phase 1 of those projects with our partners, Minneapolis and the Minneapolis Park Board. Talked about feasibility of projects, had some findings and recommendations, and then there's a lot of analysis that is going into those potential projects and kind of at the beginning of the process, but before feasibility is completed, the next step will be projects moving into design, but the board and committees will definitely hear more before those next steps happen. So lots of information to digest and a bright future of collaboration with Minneapolis.
Thank you. Are there any other events or meetings managers would like to report on? Our regular committee and meeting board schedule is printed in the agenda, along with the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting on March 19th, where Manager Olson is the liaison. Next, we'll take up the public hearing. Ms. Neal presenting on the Morningside Stormwater Improvement Project. Open the public hearing.
Good evening, President White and Board of Managers. Tonight I am before you for item 10.1, a public hearing for the board's consideration of ordering the Morningside Stormwater Improvement Project. On January 23rd, the board directed notice of a public hearing, so now we're here to hold that hearing today, and pending any public input, we will follow this hearing with a request for action for the board to formally order the project, and on doing so, that the board also authorize the administrator to execute a funding agreement and authorize an amendment to the 2025 budget in order to provide funding for the project. In terms of an agenda for tonight, I'll first provide some project background and review the proposed design, and also summarize our public noticing process. Then following the public hearing, I'll outline a few additional considerations for project ordering and go over context related to the funding agreement and the budget amendment before transitioning to our request for action. The project site is located in the Painter Creek subwatershed in the northwest part of the district. The subwatershed is one of the district's focal geographies and is a priority for water quality improvements. The site is just north of the border with Orono, but it's fully within the city of Medina. It first drains to a wetland, then west to Lake Katrina, and then south through Painter Marsh before ultimately discharging to Jennings Bay, which is impaired. The project site involves two privately owned parcels, 1245 and 1225 Maplewood Drive. The city has been looking for a way to treat about 76 acres of mostly untreated runoff that drains to the site. At the same time, the landowner at 1225 has also been looking to subdivide into 3 lots. There are 3 ravines in total that drain the site. The main channel is currently already partially piped, which is outlined in orange there on the slide. All 3 of the ravines are eroding and contribute additional nutrients to Lake Katrina and downstream Jennings Bay. The The proposed project design involves stabilizing all 3 ravines as open channels and constructing a stormwater pond. So we have the northwest tributary here, the main channel here, and this is the area that's currently partially piped already, and then the eastern tributary coming in on the east side here. And this is the stormwater pond. The northwest tributary will be stabilized through a combination of riprap and live stakes. The main channel in the middle will have the existing pooling area maintained at the outlet of the existing pipe, and the rest of the channel will include a series of 3-step pools reinforced by a combination of rock and sheet piling down to the new pond. The eastern tributary on the right will also be stabilized as an open channel with a swale to contain overflow from the existing pond to the east. That's off to the side here. The outlet structure for that existing pond will be extended underneath this proposed access road for the subdivision before entering into the open channel on the west side of the road. The project is now estimated to cost a total of $629,000 and provide 36 pounds of total phosphorus removal each year. The city plans to begin tree removal in March and construction in April of this year. And when the city initially proposed this project in 2022, the district helped the city receive state funding. The district serves as a grant administrator for the Board of Water and Soil Resources watershed-based implementation funding, and we coordinate with partners in the watershed to identify project opportunities for funding through this state grant. We worked with Medina as a part of this process to secure them $243,200 of WBIF for the project, and the city has committed $180,000. As the city worked through the design process, they identified a cost increase and requested support from the district's Land and Water Partnership Program to close this funding gap. And at the start of 2025, the city requested $280,000 in LWP funding for the project. However, as the district and city have worked together on design and permitting iterations, the design has been revised to reduce the use of sheet piling for a total cost estimate of $629,000. With this revised design and cost, the city updated their request to $200,000 in LWP funding. Based on our review of the project for both permitting and LWP eligibility, as well as our collaboration on the design, we recommend providing funding for approximately 40% of contracted construction costs up to a cap of $200,000. With the reduction in construction and overall costs, this amount would cover the remaining funding gap. Under Minnesota Statute 103B.251, before entering into a commitment to incur project costs for capital project construction, the Board of Managers must hold a public hearing and order the project on the basis of a finding that the project will advance the district's water resource goals and should proceed. On January 23rd, the board passed Resolution 25012 for the district to notice the public hearing today. Staff posted notice on our website, in the Star Tribune, through city and county contacts, and with postcards mailed to landowners near the site. District staff have not yet heard from any members of the public regarding the project in response to our notice, but the city has spoken with the neighbors adjacent to the site. So pending any public input today, staff will request that the board formally order the project following the public hearing.
Thank you, and there's no one here this evening, so we can close the public hearing and move to item 11.1, which is the resolution 2513.
Yes, item 11, action item 11.1, and this item involves 3 distinct actions. District staff are requesting that the board formally order the Morningside Stormwater Improvement Project, that the board authorize the district administrator to execute a funding agreement for the project, and that the board authorize an amendment to the 2025 budget to provide funding for the project.
I'll make that motion. Or are we still?
Do you
Not
have more
yet.
you wish to present, or should we move?
I was going to walk through some of the context around the funding agreement and budget amendment, if you'd like. So since we last discussed the project with the board on January 23rd, the city has submitted revised plans that meet our rules. And so with only a few adjustments to make, we are preparing to approve permits for the project. And in addition, with the new cost estimate of $629,000, the $200,000 requested through the LWP program would be sufficient to close the funding gap. District staff, legal counsel, and our engineer have also drafted a funding agreement, which is included as attachment 5 of the board packet. This agreement sets forth the terms and requirements for funding between the district and the city. Under this agreement, the city would be responsible for all maintenance of the pond and stabilized channels. In addition, the agreement includes that the project will be built in alignment with the design that the district and city have agreed upon. It also provides terms for the process of dispersing the funding and for inspection and maintenance of the project components. Lastly, because the city has identified a potential interest in utilizing the regional pond to meet stormwater management requirements in the future, the agreement includes terms for reimbursement of district funds should that scenario arise. And the city has reviewed the draft funding agreement and provided their feedback. We have incorporated the city's comments, and so we're requesting that the board authorize the district administrator to execute the funding agreement while we make final adjustments on advice of council and with the stipulation that only non-substantive changes be made. And because construction is proposed to occur in 2025, district support would require a budget amendment. The district's capital finance fund is used to strategically maximize capacity for project implementation by providing flexible and strategic reserves for planned and unplanned opportunities to improve the watershed, by minimizing levy volatility, and by supporting short-term cash flow needs. This fund has a current balance of $14,518,000 in assigned funds. Staff recommends a 2025 budget amendment to transfer $200,000 from the Capital Finance Fund to the Morningside Ravine Stabilization Fund so that there is no impact on the levy. So with those considerations, staff with input from District Legal Counsel are requesting under Resolution 25013 that the board formally order the Morningside Stormwater Improvement Project, authorize the district administrator to execute a funding agreement for the project, and authorize an amendment to the 2025 budget to provide funding for the project.
Thank you. No.
No. I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Manager Hejmati. Any questions? Manager Miller.
When you said there was 36 pounds of phosphorus captured, is that captured there? At the
Yes.
site?
Yes.
So could you say that there'd be 36 less pounds at Jennings Bay?
Well, I think yes, ultimately I think yes, but it's first runs through a wetland and then Lake Katrina. And
Yeah,
then,
I saw it.
yeah,
Long
so,
ways.
yeah, it's sort of a long distance, so in theory, yes, the impact does trickle all the way down to Jennings Bay, but there is, quite a big distance there, so other water bodies might see the,
Well, that's quite a bit
Impact.
of phosphorus, isn't it?
Anything? And Manager Olson.
I just want to make sure I'm reading or understanding the drawings, the WSB drawings. Are there 3 steps, 3 sheet piling groups?
yes. Let me go back to that slide here. So yeah, there's 3 sheet piling weirs. In the previous design, I believe there was 5 sheet piling weirs.
Okay.
And there was also 4 step pools, and now we've got 3 step
3
pools,
step
3 plunge pools, and they're a little bit bigger.
Okay.
So that was sort of the reduction in sheet piling that allowed for is what brought the cost down.
Okay, thank you. I saw the labeling for the one at the top, but I didn't see the arrows going to the rest of it, so I just wanted to make sure that was still sheet piling. Thank you.
Yeah, 3 sheet piling weirs.
Anything else for Ms. Neal? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, President White and Board of Managers.
Nice job.
We'll move now to 11.2, Mr. McDermott Spees presenting on Resolution 25014.
Does he understand what we do to the first-time presenters?
I wanted to, when we did a couple dry runs, so he's ready.
Hello, President White, Board of Managers. I'm James McDermott Spees. I'm joining the district as the new Project Maintenance and Land Management Program Manager. I'm here tonight to ask for the authorization to release requests for quote packages for vegetation management. For the board, I will provide some background context for the district's vegetation management, how I evaluated the district's approach to vegetation management. Kind of what I found were areas for improvement, and discuss scope of work changes based on those findings. In 2003, the board determined that vegetation management oversight should be brought in-house to drive accountability and focus on ecological and aesthetic outcomes. Over the years, the program grew as more lands and projects were added. And depicted on the map in front, you see here, is where that project was before the current iteration. In 2019, which was the last time the work was put out for bid competitively, the program consisted of 356 acres between 27 sites throughout both the upper and lower watershed, with an annual budget last year of a little over $189,000. The scope of work was extended 3 times between 2019 and 2024 due to capacity and staff turnover. As I came on, the goal was to reestablish competitive quote process for vegetation management. I worked with Mr. Whisker and others to evaluate the previous approach and identify areas where changes could be made. The first and most obvious was in the geographic groupings of the sites, wanting to regroup sites for efficiency, reducing contractor travel costs, and thus district cost. And then the integration of 2 new sites that are coming off of warranty in Arden Park and Wasserman Preserve, which adding another 16.5 acres of management. With the help of Stantec, I evaluated current site conditions at each site. Most of the sites were being managed purely from an ecological standpoint, and many of them being managed just for a noxious weed standpoint. And some of the higher visibility sites, as in like the Greenway, were known areas of concern for staff and the board. Finally, we looked at contractor performance, and contractor performance did vary. We did have some contractors that just were not meeting our standards, and then other contractors that identified a desire to have more flexible management. From this information and the additions, we moved to realigning the sites geographically into 4 regions, those being the Minneapolis area and Arden Park, the Greenway and the Minnehaha Creek headwaters, the northern upper watershed, and the southern upper watershed. Scope of work, we also addressed some scope of work changes. We did a task consolidation, providing more flexibility and ensure that we can maintain a high quality standard. For example, we took some more prescriptive line items that were in the original quote, such as spot sprays and spot mows that were called out, and some other tasks, and rolled that all in under one item of vegetation management to provide more flexibility. But we did continue to leave specific areas of interest, things like cattail management, woody invasive management, or things like boardwalk pruning, things that were more site specific. The scopes of work are provided in detail in your board packets if you need so. Coupling the flexibility with scope of work changes, we also made some changes to the monitoring and evaluation process that we go through on these contracts. The goal is to create a feedback loop of improvement in management and accountability for contractors. We've added a spring assessment that's to be done early in the year that will both recommend management for this year, but also offer recommendations for additional management and enhancements that can be made on the sites going into the next year, while still retaining that end of year summary to make sure that we're doubling down on checking in with our contractors, providing better oversight, and again, checking in on our planning process. Then in addition, the quotes are being asked for 2 years to provide continuity and a pricing baseline for the next year. Next steps, so if approved, the next steps would be releasing the RFQs. We plan to do that February 18th, receiving quotes by a deadline of March 11th, entering into a review process internally, the March 12th through 19th, and then finally bringing recommendations back to the board on March 27th. With this, I request the approval from the board for Resolution 2514 to authorize the release of requests for quote packages for vegetation maintenance. And I thank you and open the board to questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second? Manager Heshmati seconds. Questions from Mr. McDermott-Spees?
Yes, James. You said that in the past there have been some contractors who have done well and some contractors that haven't done well and so on. And we're going to be sending out quotes for these. What are we changing or what are we doing different so that we can track whether these folks are performing the way they need to, and whether some are, whether they're doing the work that they're supposed to do. Because what I'm hearing is that some people didn't do the work they were supposed to do. So how are we going to keep track of that to make sure that what we want is getting done?
President White, Manager Heshmati, my plan is to be much more active in an oversight role. Part of this year is going to be me getting much more familiar with the sites, and part of that is going to be meeting with contractors. I have previous relationships with not just the contractor that I came from, but additional contractors. It's not that big of an industry. And leveraging those previous relationships to maintaining a high standard of work. Within the contracts, we also we have standard termination language. So if we do have contractors that are not meeting our expectations, we do have a path out so that we can then find new contractors to replace them that are performing at a higher standard.
Okay. All right. And so you're going to be doing this, you're going to be meeting them and telling them what the expectations are, and then you're going to be following up like every 3 months or 2 months or something, visiting the thing, seeing what they're doing. And help me understand, please, how you do this.
Yeah, so it would be conducting site visits. Ideally, it would be with the contractors, but timing of that can be difficult.
Yes.
So I would probably be doing spot checks, and then part of the process of when they invoice is they have to submit work reports and any herbicides that's applied. We need to be able to see an herbicide application record. So through those, I can kind of tell what work they are saying that they did, and then I can go through and make assessments of the site myself. And if there are any questions, we can contact them. And then that's where the reporting requirements come in too. The early season report is ideally going to be a roadmap that the contractor is providing us to what they are going to do for the year and what the issues that they're seeing. And then the end of year report is another check-in for us of what did they actually do. Did they do the things that they said they needed to do, or are they just out there kind of doing, walking around, not really doing things that are productive?
Okay. And is there I know you're coming on this news, so this may not, you don't necessarily have to answer this question, but give me your thoughts about it, which is that in managing vegetation, there are many factors that are like, if there's going to be drought or there's going to be a flood or things change, and with climate change, there's been just a great volatility in what's been happening, and so I presume that we will have some kind of a overall plan to manage the vegetation with certain goals in mind or with certain directions. Are you going to be sharing that back with us, perhaps like in the meeting we had at 5 o'clock today? Are you letting us know what your thoughts are and where we're going and so on?
Yeah, over the next year, as we go through a growing season and I have more time to become familiar with the sites, my goal would be to kind of make an evaluation, make some things. Part of this contract is to provide a baseline management going forward. so we can maintain the quality site and make improvements. And then also bringing in that early assessment allows us to bring enhancements into the budget for next year. But yeah, I mean, I could bring in a vegetation assessment, kind of a summary of where I think things are at. You know, as you said, I'm fairly new, so I don't quite know the full process of that. But
Yes, of course.
well, as we continue to figure things out, yeah, I mean, we can do vegetation assessments. Some of that might be changing different species that we maybe do during enhancements and things like that as things continue to change. Part of it too is changing the scopes and providing more flexibility to the contractors is partially in response to some of those things as well. The more that we, you know, it's can be easy to decide that we want this done and this done and this done, but these contractors just inherent in like how often they go out to do the work, they're on the sites more frequently than we are and generally can provide more insight and adapt better to the conditions if we provide that flexibility, as long as we're still checking in with them and providing proper oversight to make sure that we are not paying for work that's not being done or not being done to a standard that we approve of.
Manager Miller?
Well, I'd feel more comfortable if we said it would be on site when they were. I'm serious because, you know, I watched the boardwalk work, and you know, there was never anybody there watching them, and as they were sitting in their cars smoking cigarettes rather than doing the work and charging us for that.
President White, Manager Miller. Yeah, especially starting out, I would like to do site visits when they're on site doing the work. I would like to be observing that. You know, there's obviously a lot of other time constraints and things like that. 27 sites, you know, a lot of this management is going to be happening, you know, it's based on plant phenology, and the size of the watershed is big, but it's not so big where all the flowers are flowering at the same time. We don't have large things. So management is going to be happening on different sites in different areas at the same time. So being on site every single time just isn't necessarily feasible. But having site check-ins with at least every contractor, making sure that we are observing the work that they do during spot checks. You know, over the course of the next year or two too, as well, we're going to ideally be the PMLM program is going to be making some staffing increases as well to make things like that much more feasible going forward.
Other questions, Manager Olson?
How many contractors do we typically deal with?
President White, Manager Olson. The 2024 contractors, we had 4 contractors spread over 5 contracts. Those contractors were Landbridge Ecological, Minnesota Native Landscapes, Prairie Restorations, Inc., and Natural Shorelines.
Do you have any favorites?
Don't pick favorites.
Okay.
You know all these folks.
Good answer.
You know, following up on what he's saying, you know all these folks and you worked with them before.
I've worked hand in hand with many of them. I obviously don't know every single contractor, but there are also putting things out to bid is also going to be an opportunity to bring in new contractors as well. There's been some new contractors that aren't part of the mix and haven't been part of the mix as far as I can tell in the records, that, you know, might provide a different standard of work.
And one other question was, you mentioned that we had contractors that asked for, but the term was flexible management. Can you give an example of what flexible management would be?
Some of that is paraphrasing of kind of what the contractors are asking. They would ask a lot of questions. They would prescribe different management things, you know, and so Prairie Restorations was talking about there's some woody management things like that out at 6 Mile Marsh Prairie that they didn't necessarily have the funds or flexibility to be able to accomplish. And I saw that reported in some of the things, but it wasn't necessarily added to the budget in previous years. You know, kind of under this thing where things are less prescriptive, we can maybe take some of the vegetation management visits and move that money into a different visit structure. You know, as long as we're making that decision and not just the contractor making it on their own. You know, then we can take some of those existing funds and move them around to better serve the needs of each individual site.
Okay.
Manager Sarno?
city of Edina, Arden Park, how much of the cost is the responsibility of the city and how much is it of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District? How's that divided up? Maintenance of it.
President White, Manager Sando, we have a contract, or we have an operation and maintenance agreement. Generally, under that, it doesn't prescribe individual costs, but generally, we're responsible for like the natively vegetated areas, the kind of the more naturalized zones, and the park is, or the city of Edina is more responsible for the actual stormwater pond maintenance, any infrastructure maintenance besides like interpretive sign that falls under our purview. And then they do all of the tree management, so any downed trees or any invasive tree cutting, they're going to handle, you know, on a large scale. We'll do some small scale stuff of tree cutting and stuff like that too. But yeah, I don't, at this time, I don't have specific fund allocation percentages. With that being a new park coming underneath these contracts, I haven't seen contractor numbers. That'll be part of what we get back from the quotes.
Good, thank you.
Other questions? Angela,
Just a comment that in 4 weeks, you have a deep understanding of what's happening here and clearly applied your background. So thank you and good job on your first presentation.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions about locations. I don't remember or know where the Jennings Bay wetland restoration is.
President White, the Jennings Bay restoration, if I can.
At Johnston Farms?
It's Painter Creek.
Yeah, it's up in Painter Creek. It feeds into
Okay.
Jennings Bay. You can't see my cursor. But it's second from the bottom in the orange there, Jennings Bay Wetland Restoration above Our Lady of the Lake.
It's Painter Creek. And
Yep.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And then the other question is, Mr. Whisker.
Just the context on that is, it was part of the floodplain mitigation for the highway, or the County Road 101 causeway that we did on tax forfeit land. So that's probably why it's not
All right.
sticking out in your memory. It was part of that joint project with the shoreline through Izetta. We had to compensate for floodplain storage, and we did that in partnership with
How big is that site?
I don't know how large it is. James does, though.
I believe it's about 3 acres.
Okay.
I remember that question, I didn't ever know the name of it. And then the next one is a reference to a possible added trail spur at 6 Mile restoration. What's that?
I did see some reference to a trail spur. I didn't see any documentation on that being added as a project in 25.
Okay.
Where did you see that? Where did you see that?
It was in the description of the 6 Mile. I didn't make a page notation.
I missed
But that maybe has
Yeah.
already happened or not going to happen. Okay.
Yeah, there are some trails connecting from the Dakota Trail to within the mile in there. Maybe it's some previous stuff. Don't quite have a full spectrum of the background yet.
Might be some fragment left over.
Yeah.
Most of us have walked that trail, I think. It's such a lovely property.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Welcome, James.
Thank you.
Great job.
Mr. Haven has 11.3, Resolution 25-015.
Good evening, Madam Chair and managers. I am before you with 25015, seeking authorization to amend the 325 Blake Road Redevelopment Advisory Services Agreement with Shenandoah Consulting Group. As the board is aware, Shenandoah Consulting Group is Mr. Chuck Lutz, the former CPED director from the city of Minneapolis and a longtime advisor to the Watershed District. Mr. Lutz has been assisting the district with 325 Blake Road since the cooperative agreement in 2020 with the city of Hopkins, including, the entire developer selection process and all of the ongoing negotiations and other conversations that have occurred in the approximately 4 years. There is more detailed information, including his revised scope of work, in your packet as part of your consideration. The action requested this evening is for Mr. Lutz to continue his advisory services to the district under the current contract, being that the original contract has reached its funding cap after approximately 4 years. We are recommending the amendment amount to the contract of $25,000, which is expected to extend his role approximately 12 to 18 months as we continue to explore redevelopment opportunities at 325 Blake Road. With that, I would take any questions from the board.
Thank you, Mr. Heyman. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move approval.
Manager Miller, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Olson, questions for Mr. Heyman? Manager Loftus?
Could you remind me, are these some of the costs of doing business that we're circulating back to the developer?
Yeah, Manager Loftus, Chair White managers, some of the costs are the redevelopment advisory services from Mr. Lutz is not, but legal fees are part of the ongoing agreement and amendments that have occurred and are being tracked and have been at various times throughout the agreement passed back to the developer.
Okay, so more legal, not so
Correct.
much these services?
Yep.
Okay.
Have we been paid?
For what has been to date through previous amendments. The current amendment is still ongoing.
So they paid for our legal services that we had occurred with all these attorneys that show up?
Manager Miller, Chair White managers, they have through the second amendment, which was the last time that there were fees associated with it. Current fees that are being tracked have not been transferred back or billed back yet. Yes.
Anything else?
I think I just appreciate the quality of the consultants that you picked out. They've been excellent, really excellent and outstanding.
My guess is you'll vote for this resolution. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Are there any inquiries, issues, or ideas that managers wish to bring forward this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to the administrator's report.
Thank you, President White, managers. 2 or 3 small items, I think, this evening. At our last meeting, Manager Hejmati asked for an update on our work plan related to diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm not here to give that tonight, but I wanted to give an update. Presumably, you're just looking for a progress report at some point, and perhaps also curious, just given recent executive orders at the federal level, which have affected federal programming, but also generated a response across a number of Fortune 500s as well. So our team is continuing to advance our work plan. We've made good progress on a number of the key initiatives. Our policy planning team is going to be giving an update to the Citizens Advisory Committee at the March meeting, so just next month. And they'll be in front of the Policy Planning Committee, providing an update on our DI work plan as well as our climate action work plan in April. So if you've got very specific questions that you want answered before then, I can take those offline. Otherwise, there'll be a detailed work plan update in March for Citizens Advisory Committee and then April for the board.
We can talk about it offline.
Okay.
I have some specific questions.
Great. President White mentioned our visit with the League of Women Voters, which was a really fun time and exceptionally pleasant. They're just deeply curious and pretty wonky on the policy side of thing. I think at least one of the representatives was in-house counsel for Metropolitan Council for a period of years. So really asked some deep thinking, probative questions around our philosophy of balanced urban ecology, and really understood why that's an approach that is necessary for us with our geography, the 29 different communities, and integrating water resource work into the built environment. So in follow-up to our meeting and the presentation that Samantha and President White gave, we've been invited to present at their annual meeting to their coalition, which is going to be held, I think April 30th is what they said, at the Capital Region headquarters to profile. They said they're really interested in the philosophical approach behind the balanced urban ecology policy, looking for a couple of examples. They think their members would find that deeply interesting. They observed we were talking about the cultural change that we think we're pushing with balanced urban ecology, and they have a lot of membership that's interested in watershed management across the state. So they thought they could learn quite a bit from that. So I thought it was a good third-party validation from the League of Women Voters, which do a great service. And then we spoke on Minneapolis in committee this evening. Part of our planning in that geography includes working with a technical team, with a staff leadership or coordinating team, and then a steering committee of elected officials. It's worth noting that in Minneapolis, 2025 will be an election year, so we're starting to track that. There's already quite a lot of movement. We'll be watching that keenly. Councilmember Koski, who's been chairing our steering committees, campaigning for mayor, Commissioner Schaefer, who represents the Cedar area and is on the steering committee, is running for city council, so looking to make a jump from the park board to city council against Councilmember Cashman. And then I think Becca Thompson, park board commissioner, is actually moving and relocating from North Minneapolis to south and is looking to run against Councilmember Chowdhury, which is also on our steering committee and covers the Hiawatha area. And I think all park board commissioners generally are up for elections, so we'll be watching that closely. Commissioner Abeni and Musich are the other two park board commissioners that serve on our steering committee. They've recently assumed leadership positions at the park board, with Commissioner Abeni taking the role of president and Commissioner Musich taking vice president. So regardless of how things shake out, with two commissioners making a bid for city council, we are going to have transition of some sort within that steering committee composition. So we'll be keeping tabs on that. And for, I guess, February 13th, that's the admin report, unless there's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Whisker. Any questions? Very well. Then we'll move on to item 12.1, Mr. Heyman, 325 Blake Road Restoration and Redevelopment.
Good evening, Madam Chair, managers. We are before you this evening to continue discussions surrounding the negotiation of developable land at 325 Blake Road, and as such would recommend the board advance into closed session. And so chooses, I know Lewis Smith, our legal counsel, can lead the board in that process.
Before we do that,
Yes?
we recently got a letter from the mayor, and we recently responded to it. Could we put that in the record?
Did you ask, can we, or did
Or
we?
did we? Is it in the record?
President White, Manager Miller, Board of Managers, we have not entered that into the public record as a formal item of correspondence to the board. It was from the mayor addressed to me, and it's part of the ongoing dialogue that our liaisons are having with the Hopkins City Council regarding amendments that have been proposed by Lattice and are being considered by the board. So that's something that the board can consider, but hasn't been made part of the public packet as of tonight.
I'd be interested to hear our council's advice on that. It seems to me that it's such a important document that it should be part of the record so that people can know what the position of the city is and what our response to it is.
Mr. Smith?
Madam President, managers, it certainly is within the board's discretion to request that that correspondence be placed in the public record of the meeting. And I appreciate Manager Miller's suggestion of its significance and is within the prerogative of the board.
Thank you.
Okay, also move. Second.
Motion seconds, discussion?
I'm
Those in favor?
curious strategically how that would affect how we work with them, because that's ultimately what I want, is to be able to get this project done. So will it help? Will it in a way? What do you guys think?
Well, I tell you, the reason it's a profound piece of information about what their position is. We've got millions of dollars invested, thousands of hours of staff time, and we've in 15 years, as far as I can recall, involved. And this is the culmination of all that work and money and time. This one-page letter from the mayor. I think it's critical that we have this. The public knows what the city of Hopkins' position is on this important project that we're the landholders on it, and these assurances that they won't work with anybody else and that they won't treat us as landowner, but as a supplicant of zoning changes and land unit development and tax increment and roadways and everything else, tied into one developer and one developer only.
I'm not concerned about that, but the timing of it maybe is something that we might want to put forward.
Well, I think it's probably, our position is probably being represented to various levels of government much differently from that letter. And I think it's important that we make it clear what we're responding to.
Mr. Whisker?
I would just reinforce what Louis said. Obviously, it's the board's prerogative. There's nothing in terms of protected information in there. The only thing that I'd offer is we are recommending this evening that we enter closed session to discuss terms of negotiation with surrounding the real estate purchase and development of 325. And perhaps one thing to consider is having that conversation and then exiting closed session. And if you'd like to make the matter part of the public record, you could do it then. But I don't have a strong perspective one way or the other this evening.
I do, and I've been involved in government for a long time, development, finance, and I've never seen such an ultimatum on behalf of a individual developer, and I think it's important that it be noted.
Any other discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that will happen.
So could I just ask a procedural question of Mr. Smith? Will we integrate those into this evening's packet retroactively then, just as a matter of publish it on the website, or would we bring them forward at the next meeting? Just looking for clarity on the motion.
I propose that it be in the minutes.
In the minutes, okay.
Isn't that appropriate, Mr. Smith?
Madam President, Manager Miller, typically we don't place correspondence as a part of the minutes, but the minutes would reflect the motion that was passed and the request that the letters be placed in the public record, I would say, of this meeting. And so to accomplish the motion, I would understand the direction to staff to either attach those as a part of the permanent meeting packet of this meeting, and the minutes will record that motion.
Very good. They can be integrated into the information items and correspondence portion of the agenda, if that makes sense. And so they'll be integrated into the digital packet online.
Okay, thank you. If we're ready, Louis, would you state the reason for our closed session?
Madam President, we recommend that the board go into closed session for the purpose of considering the expiration or amendment of terms of the purchase and sale agreement for 325 Lake Road in Hopkins.
Thank you. Is there a motion to that effect?
So,
Manager Olson, is there a second? To go into closed session? Hajmati? Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, your vote is noted.
Right.
Go ahead. So is there a motion to go back into open session?
so moved.
I'll take the motion from Miller, a second from Olson. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I didn't have to do that because we're not recording this, but anyway. Now, the next item on our agenda is the Administrator's Annual Performance Evaluation, which also requires a closed session. Does anyone want to take a break before we do that?
Yes, let's do that, please.
Okay, let's
Thank you.
take 10 minutes.
Can't we do this some other time?
You mean 2 weeks from now, when we're talking about the other thing? Okay, we'll take a 10-minute recess.
Okay.
We are back in session. Louis, do you want to state the reason for the closed session?
For the purpose of the performance evaluation of the administrator.
Thank you. Is there a motion to go into closed
So
session?
moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Manager Sando. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. May I have a motion to go back into open session?
So moved.
Miller? Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good. We are in open session. We are adjourned.